So I think it's really important that going forwards, that there's that clarity about what a GRC, the benefits, what it gives you and what it doesn't, just so that people are really clear. And I just wonder if the Secretary of State is planning on doing any work around that, about defining very clearly the outcome, as it were, of acquiring a GRC, just so everyone's clear. Because I don't want to see anyone in a situation where they're not securing what they thought they were.
Yeah. So,
has been clear about our position around the Supreme Court ruling.
Right.
We will, of course, continue to keep under review the Gender Recognition Act, the case that some will make for reform. For many people, it does still matter to acquire a gender recognition certificate, even though the Women in Scotland Supreme Court ruling set out that sex for the purposes of the Equality Act means biological sex. But I do want to stress that, of course, many trans people choose not to go through that process.
Obviously, one of the issues that we've had, and obviously this was before your time, but obviously the original code that we have right now has misinterpreted the law, shall we say, and given some confusing advice to people, which has caused no end of problems for lots of different groups. So obviously it's important for that to be updated. When we heard from the chair of the HRC and the chief executive a couple of weeks ago, they said they did ask the government to withdraw the existing code because of that confusion, and the government decided not to. And I'm just wondering if you could elaborate on why that was, what the thought process was for that.
I do understand the point that the HRC make in this regard, but were we to do so without the new code coming into force, then there would be a vacuum that would be left. So whilst I appreciate the need to update the code, whilst I understand the argument they make, it would leave quite a big gap.
The situation that we're now in, following obviously the Supreme Court judgment, what really are the benefits of having a GRC?
You're right that the For Women Scotland ruling did make clear that sex for the purposes of the Equality Act meant biological sex, and that does then have implications in terms of gender recognition certificates, because biological sex is the determining factor where it comes to the understanding of sex within the Equality Act. But of course, through the Equality Act, trans people continue to be protected from harassment and discrimination. The Act is also very clear on that point. And on the wider question around Gender Recognition Act reform in the future, of course, this is an area we'll continue to keep under review along with many others, but is not currently a priority for government, given the limitations that will often exist around parliamentary time, and the other priorities that we have around the draft conversion practices bill, which will be fully trans-inclusive.
And how does that now sit?
The ruling made clear that sex for the purposes of the Equality Act was biological sex, and therefore, where it comes to gender recognition certificates, sex is not changed for the purposes of the Act. But I would expect that trans people, and the draft code also makes this clear, that trans people do need access to services that are appropriate for them.